when he healed the man at Bethesda, they were around some poachers. And there was a group of people there, I don't know how much, a large number, but it was in a confined locality. The man that was healed with some sight, he again is by himself, and folk don't even know that it was Jesus who did the healing. But this miracle is out in the open. Matter of fact, there are more witnesses that see this miracle than any other miracle that he has done. Even in raising Lazarus from the dead, there was not this kind of magnitude of people. And so it says in so many words that no one can dispute, because there's too many witnesses that Jesus performed a miracle. And so the miracle in itself is amazing, just from those few facts. And so now as we look at John chapter 6, although there's not a lot of frills here, there is this amazing information that we can find from this text that prayerfully will help us. I check the book. In John chapter 6, the Bible says that around verse number 1, verse number 2, these particular words. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great multitude followed him. Watch this now. They followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. Now, what's interesting here is that the Bible is very clear. John says the only reason they were following Jesus was because they saw the power of his miracle over those that were diseased. And so they followed basically because they were curious. They were after being excited. And so nothing has changed today. Our folk come oftentimes because of the excitement. They're looking for excitement. They are curious. Instead of them coming to really find out what God would have us to know and do in order to live down here, more folk are interested in being excited and taking the ability to satisfy their curiosity than to come out to find out what Jesus has to say. And so they came, the Bible says, for that particular reason, John says. Watch the book. Around verse number 3 and 4, the Bible says, and Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. And what's interesting here is that the Passover time, that's very close, as a time of festivity, a time of eating. And in the midst of this particular eating in regard to the Passover, where there ought to be plenty of food, there comes now an incident where there are folk that are not hungry and need of food. And so the Bible says now, around verse 5, when Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, what shall we buy bread that these may eat? The Bible says, when he looked up and he saw the great multitude, the great company of people, Matthew says, in regard to the same account, that he was moved with compassion. Let's check the book. In Matthew 14, around verse number 14, when Matthew writes about this account, notice what he says. Let's check the book. In Matthew chapter 14, around verse number 14, we find these words. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and watch it, church, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. What Matthew shares with us in regard to what John says is that Jesus was moved when he saw what was occurring. It touched his heart The word compassion carries the idea or signifies one suffering alongside another person. Do you get that? The word compassion means and signifies one suffering alongside another. And so Jesus now puts himself alongside this great multitude, and he suffers along with them. Let's check the book. In the Hebrew writing, we find these words. Let's check the book. The Hebrew writer writes, in Hebrew 4, around verse 15, some powerful words. Let's check the book. In Hebrew 4, around verse 15, the Hebrew writer writes, for we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet the Bible says he was without sin. And so what's very interesting here is that the Lord, although he knew that the only reason they came was that they saw what he could do as he healed those that were diseased. Although he knew they didn't come so much to listen to him and find out what they needed to do about their souls instead of their physical lives, he was not indifferent, but he cared for them anyhow, church. We're talking about Jesus. Now, watch this. Let's check the book. In John 6 again, around verse 5, we find these words. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he saith, watch this, unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? Now, what we need to make sure we understand is that when Jesus asks a question, he is not seeking information that he does not know about. I want to say it again. When Jesus asks a question, he is not seeking or looking for information that he already does not know about or has the answer himself. The Bible says that the question that he asked in regard to how are they going to be fed or whence are they going to be fed was for the sole purpose of proving Philip. That is, testing Philip. Church, do you see what I see? Philip is in a situation that's an awesome situation. It is, in so many words, as we will look at it a little bit more, it is almost considered to be an impossible situation. How in the world can you feed about 20 to 25,000 folk when you ain't got the means to do that, the resources there to do that? How can that occur? Church, there are some impossible situations that we believe that are in our lives, church. But we need to recognize something that Philip and Andrew did not recognize. And that is that instead of looking at our resources, the stuff that we got, we think we got, and instead of looking at the circumstances, we need to first look at Jesus. Church, daily we are being tested by Jesus, by God. Not to give God or Jesus an opportunity to know how we're going to do in regard to the test. They already know the outcome of our test. But the test is for us, that we may get an opportunity to see where we really are. He that thinketh he stand, take heed, the Bible says, lest he fall. So sometimes the test that we have in our lives, the day-to-day test, somebody says something about us that's hurtful, harmful. How do we respond to that kind of test? somebody steps on my toe, how do I respond to that test? Somebody has been lying on me. How do I respond to that test? The washing machine, the engine in the car, the refrigerator, the roof on the house begins to leak. How do I respond? Do I get all upset and worry about how I'm going to handle it or fly off the handle? The question is, how do I handle the test? Because the test, sure enough, comes every day. And there are some tests that are more difficult than others.